When a kid is really deliberately trying to work a situation, that's more behavioral. But when a child is having a big emotional reaction, or even if it's not big, but kind of covert, then we're going to attack and go towards how to help them cope with those emotions.
Mm-hmm. Mental health challenges are often kept in the closet or even swept under the rug. We know they can affect anyone, from adults to children, and the struggle is real. Join us as we talk about relevant topics with mental health experts. Welcome to Equip Online, a place for hope and help.
Welcome to Equip Online. I'm Wally, and this is Brian. And this week, we're going to be looking at some tips on how to help parents and young kids navigate and manage their emotions. Our special guest today is Dr. Lauren Pasqua. And Brian, if you would, tell us a little bit about Dr. Pasqua.
Absolutely. So it's really looking forward to this conversation. So Dr. Pasqua is the founder, executive director of the Connections Child and Family Center here in the Woodlands area, kind of where we're located. So she has wanted to be a psychologist. I love this, since reading a book for teen girls during a turbulent year of middle school. So this is like something that's been in you for quite a while,
Yes.
This desire. I love that. And then right after college, she entered a graduate program in the Atlanta area and worked to get her doctorate in clinical psychology for 5 years of your life dedicated to that. That's amazing. She's passionate about working with children and families, especially our community's youngest members, infants, toddlers, preschoolers. That's really where your heart is, and that's where you've devoted a lot of your career to that age group. So that's awesome. So Dr. Pasqua, can you tell us just maybe in a minute or less, just maybe a little more about yourself? Anything else you want to add to that?
Sure. So I'm a clinical child psychologist, and I own a group practice. Have a team of fantastic therapists and other psychologists working for me. And I started the group in the Woodlands area so that because I really felt there was a need for a lot of professionals who are very experienced and dedicated to working with kids and families. I'm a mom myself. I have 3 kids, 6, 3, and 1. And that has really even broadened my expertise, I think, and my ability to kind of connect with parents, because I know personally that being a parent is one of the hardest jobs ever, especially working with, kids' emotions and big feelings, which I think is a big part of what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. Speaking of the topic, and so I think we always strive to have relevant topics for these episodes, but this is certainly one with, if you're a parent and you've got kids, we've been navigating a lot of new things, and as mid-August kind of hit for a lot of us, even for me, I was in that boat where I was now not only a parent, but also spending even extra time with my first grader and being a teacher as well. And
wearing all the hats.
Yeah, right. And like kind of getting to know my child and even more and, seeing that he doesn't always like doing his math, and there's certain letters he doesn't like to write, and seeing stress and seeing emotions, right. And realizing that even me as a parent, I'm being stretched in a lot of different directions. So I think this is such a huge topic for us.
Great.
It's relevant. We encounter this kind of thing every day in our homes and in our environments. So I'm excited just to jump in this conversation. So I'm going to throw it over to Wally. Wally, if you want to kick us off and get
some of us are a little older here, so it may be. Yeah, this. I'm pointing to me, so this may be more relevant to me with grandkids. Thinking about that, but
there you go. It's still applicable for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of grandparents have stepped in
absolutely
to help. Right?
Oh, absolutely, especially teaching. So we're so thankful for you guys. Grandparents can really leave a legacy. So one of the realities, though, of being a parent is that we do have to deal with our kids' temper tantrums and even our own meltdowns. Yeah. And so when we find ourselves in a meltdown moment with our child, what should we do? How do we navigate that, Dr. Pasqua?
Okay. Well, I think one of the things I like to do when I'm talking with families about big emotions, big feelings in kids, is I like to kind of give a framework to understand where those feelings are coming from and what is actually realistic to expect of your child in those situations. So I'm going to do that by kind of giving you a little description of the brain. So imagine that my arm and my hand together make up the brain. I'm going to hold my hand up next to my head okay, like this. And the inside of my wrist would be considered the brain stem. That's the oldest part of the brain, the part that's really like the lizard brain that's kind of keeping our major organs going, our breathing, all of those kinds of things. And then if we look at our palm and the thumb folding over in the middle while the fingers are up, this part here in the middle with the thumb folded over would be the midbrain, which is the amygdala, the hypothalamus, the thalamus. These things are involved in emotion and in memory. And then if we fold our fingers down over the top of our thumb, then this part would be considered what we can think of the new brain, the cortex. This is our thinking and rational part of our brain where we make good decisions and we have logic. And that's usually what we think we're talking to when we're speaking to our child. But the reality is that when kids are upset, when parents are upset, that part of the brain is not online. So really what happens is the brain gets a message or some, a direction or something comes in and the brain has to decide, is this a threat? Do I feel threatened? Is it not going the way I wanted? And that amygdala that I said was mentioning is involved in the emotion, makes that decision. And if it feels like there's a threat or something's going on that's not good, then the lid pops up. And the lid being the fingers over the top. That's the new brain, right? Thinking brain. And when your lid is up, you're not really thinking clearly. And that's what's happening when kids are really emotional. They flip their lid.
We know what that is. Yep.
Right? And so they're in this really old lizard brain state, right? Where you can't really communicate with them. It's just emotion, pure emotion. The fight, flight, or freeze response is active. Their bodies are flooded with adrenaline, and they are just upset. So in order to calm the child and to be able to navigate these difficult situations, we have to get that lizard tamed. We have to calm the lizard down, And so we can talk again about some ways in which parents can do that and can help facilitate that process. But I think this is a really great way to kind of frame the whole conversation. And knowing that you're not talking to a rational kid when they're really emotional. So asking questions and making demands is not going to work until we can calm that lizard.
Yeah. Wow. That is so good, because I think so much of this butting of heads with our children, we're really, we're attacking a problem and completely, it's like speaking a foreign language. We're putting we get more and more frustrated and we're trying harder and harder. And we're just on a completely different lane. Like we're just not even connecting with them at all the way you described it. So I think it's a great beginning point to understand kind of that framework. And like you said, I think we're going to get into in just a little bit about if that's going on, how do we get in on that same level to help them self-regulate? So I'm excited about that. But before we do, I know another concept, Dr. Pasqua, you talk about is this idea of capacity. Mm-hmm. And so just tell us a little bit about how capacity impacts us as parents and children, and unpack that just a little bit.
Okay, so first think about this, that when your child's lid is flipped and they're out of control and they're emotional, it's pretty likely that your lid is starting to rise up if it's not flipped already. Right?
I've never done that. No, yeah.
It's a pretty emotional situation to be in. You're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, helpless, and so that lid might be going up in reaction. So that's especially true in situations where the parent might not be at full capacity. And that can often be like at the end of the day, a long day where we might have had a really busy day at work. We've had a lot of different obligations. We've been running around trying to, drive kids to all their activities, get homework done, whatever it has been. We're tired. They're tired. Our capacity's low. And we're not going to respond perhaps in our best state. And we're going to be more sensitive or likely to have our lid go up. And the same is true for our kids. So I think we always, as parents, we have a tendency to just expect the same response to the same kind of stimulus all the time. And that's not really realistic. It's not realistic for us. It's not realistic for kids. And kids' capacity to manage their feelings, to manage their behavior, that fluctuates throughout the day, from day to day. It depends a lot on different factors like sleep, appetite, stress, and then just like I said, the daily stresses of being at school and all of that. I find the afternoon tends to be really like that witching hour. It is a really hard time for families.
Yeah, I've noticed the same thing. It seems like my kids, that maybe 4 or 5 o'clock when they're home from school, it's better just to give them a snack and let them have their moment for a while.
Sure.
Don't ask too much of them in that period. They're
Reduce
just tired.
demands.
They're kind of worn out. Anytime we try to do something too productive in that time period, it just never goes well. So I think to me, that's a capacity issue probably.
Yeah. And I love how you said, I've realized as a parent that the best thing to do is drop my demands.
Yeah. Yeah.
And drop my expectations, lower the bar, and realize this is not the time that we're going to get a lot of big things accomplished as a family.
Good. It's really good. Awesome.
It's fascinating to me because as I'm thinking about this, and the next question really has to do with helping parents to be able to self-regulate, and how do you help the kids do that? But as you were talking on that first question, I was brought back to what would happen frequently with our son. Man, he could manipulate the system. He learned that because I would grab his arm and tell him to stop doing that and apply a little bit of pressure. And he would go into this, "Oh, you broke my arm" mode. So it wasn't the on the ground temper tantrum, but I would say, you're acting out of line. And then we would go into this and I was like, oh my gosh. And we were at church one time when this happened. And I'm not kidding. A guy walked by that I knew that was a paramed. And I said, would you check his arm out? I told him what had happened. He goes, so he did. He said, I don't think it's broken, but I guess you'd have to get an x-ray to really know.
Oh boy.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. So there's just all different ways that kids can, some may throw temper tantrums. Some may not learn how to manipulate a system to get themselves out of trouble. And maybe that's a subject for another day, Brian. I don't know.
It could be, yeah.
But it just comes to my mind in this, that there's all different ways that it can look. But how do you, so you've got that child with they're flip their lid, and maybe by this point in the conversation, I'm the parent and I flip my lid too. What advice would you give us as to be able to cut short of that where it doesn't escalate to that? Or we know with our kids, it's going to from time to time. How do we help them to learn to navigate that and to self-regulate themselves as well?
Oh, there's so many things about what you said that I'm excited to talk about. Just awesome. So many of those things. So back to your example of your son and the squeezing of the arm and his big reaction. I'm wondering if you, now that you are outside of the situation, can take a step back and think about how he interpreted that. Did he view that as a threat? Did his body and his brain feel like, I'm being threatened, I'm not safe?
Yeah.
And then we have this emotional reaction, we have a physical reaction, and the outward expression of that was maybe a little, your perception of being, it was kind of dramatic, oh, you hurt me. But I wonder if internally he was feeling anxious, frightened, emotional.
He probably did, and thinking about that. But yet as a parent, I would say he's acting out of line.
Yeah.
It's not that I shouldn't discipline him, but I can see where a child would, that's typically not in trouble, would see that as a threat. Ooh, I'm not used to this, so I'm going into self-defense mode. So how do we work with that?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the questions you had was more around compliance and following rules, which I think is maybe a little different than having an emotional reaction or a tantrum, because I view the way that we approach those differently. When a kid is really deliberately trying to work a situation, that's more behavioral. But when a child is having a big emotional reaction, or even if it's not big, but kind of covert, then we're going to attack and go towards how to help them cope with those emotions. There's kind of a couple of factors. One, you said, how do we help them stop going down that path? And in order to do that, I think a lot of the work is around, for the child, it's understanding their own emotions, being able to recognize how they're feeling in the moment. But this is a process, self-regulation is something that develops over the lifespan, even into adulthood. And school-age kids and younger really don't have that full capacity for self-regulation or self-management, and they need us to work with them. And so what I consider that is as co-regulating. We're working as a team and and helping them get calm and get regulated in a difficult situation, much as you would with a baby. We do it really naturally with babies. The baby's crying and we go toward them, we soothe, we help them get calm. So there's this nice dance, right? A co-regulation. And that actually needs to progress throughout as we're scaffolding and helping kids learn to get their own emotions under control when they're feeling overwhelmed. So that's one piece, working on the emotional identification, understanding feelings, working as a team, so that co-regulation. Another piece would be modeling. So what am I doing as a parent? What am I showing my child about feelings? And nobody's perfect. I'll be the first to admit. My lid goes up sometimes. I find myself yelling and having my own adult tantrum. But then I go back and I tell my child, that wasn't the right thing to do. I'm sorry I yelled. And so then I'm modeling reparation, But if we also practice our own self-management and we're modeling day in and day out of how to handle frustration, how to handle disappointment, how to handle situations that maybe don't go the way we wanted them to in a calm way, and we're using coping skills and we're telling our kids that, then they're going to pick up on some of it and it's going to resonate more with them. And then it'll be a reminder when you're coaching them in the moment.
Yeah. Awesome. It seems, we talked about being older and being a grandparent earlier, that I guess just tolerance that you learn over time with age and stuff, but that many times it's probably a lot easier for a grandparent to come alongside in that capacity than it is for a parent.
Yeah, I would say so. I think that little bit of distance can be helpful, and that they maybe don't have quite as much of an emotional investment. Not that they're emotionally invested, but investment in the behavior being a certain way. Yeah, I agree. I think grandparents can stay a little calmer and more regulated in a difficult situation. Overall, there's always outliers.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a fascinating topic. And, I think about, we've got our youngest is 7, but definitely still has those meltdowns and flipping your lid moments for sure.
Sure.
And, there's sometimes I realize as a parent, I don't want to take the time to really help them self-regulate. I just want to,
been there.
I'm thinking about, I've got all this to do right now. Yeah. I just want a quick fix.
Yep.
And it's not always, there's not just a quick fix, right? A lot of times you do need to kind of be able to spend a little time to help them through that process.
Usually there's not a quick fix. I wish there was.
Yeah.
I wish I could wave my magic wand and it would be all better.
Right. Yeah. And I think, sometimes, I think maybe there's probably some negative self-regulate. Maybe, I know technology, sometimes we could probably overuse that because kids nowadays, when they're like 6 months old, are growing up with iPads and all that kind of stuff. So that can maybe be a temptation as a parent to maybe rely too heavily on something else to kind of constantly
occupy the child.
Yeah. I mean, is there a place for that sometimes, or what's kind of the right balance even of finding the right thing to, I mean, what if something like that does calm them down? How do you kind of manage maybe some of that too?
I think everything has its place. And of course there's going to be times where you're in a public situation perhaps, and there could be dangers if the child is really dysregulated and having a tantrum laying on the floor or in the middle of the parking lot, for example. And so the way you respond in those kinds of situations might look a little bit different. But you would know your goal, that you're working towards, which is practicing these skills and helping your child practice the skills so they can be better self-managers over time. Though some of the techniques that we can talk about, you can use even when you're setting a firmer limit to protect them. Like, I hear that you're really upset that you didn't get to take that cookie with you from the grocery store, but you can't lay down in the middle of the parking lot. You're going to get run over. So I'm going to keep you safe and carry you to the car, kicking and screaming. Yeah.
So you're kind of validating that emotion, but then also, helping them realize, but we can have the tantrum in the car. Right. Yeah.
Let's get to a safe place first.
But you're kind of still hearing them. Like, I see this emotion. I see what's happening in you. I acknowledge that.
So as an adult, and I'm sure that you probably studied some of the EQ concept, your emotional quotient, in your studies. But I think about that and think about how that if we can take that into consideration with our children, that we're wanting to do whatever we can to raise emotionally healthy kids, that it's going to allow them to go much further in life. I mean, the studies have been done that compare the IQ to the EQ, and actually the EQ has more to do how you regulate yourself, how you respond to your success in life than IQ.
Yeah, I would agree. That's absolutely true. Emotional intelligence and social intelligence, both of those interpersonal skills and emotional skills are more predictive of long-term success.
Yeah.
So this is a really important topic. I agree.
Absolutely.
And what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things we love to get to do with our guests is to get real practical.
Okay.
And, I know I couldn't help but notice, and if you're listening, Dr. Pasqua brought some really fun looking props over here. We'll try to describe those a little bit, but I know she brought some props. Maybe walk us through some real life scenarios that maybe parents run into with their young kids, and maybe some techniques that might be helpful that we could put into practice, if you don't mind.
Sure. So as parents, I think in terms of the response to an already challenging situation where the emotions are high, the lids are flipped, people are freaking out, first things first is that we have to regulate ourselves, because if we go up, our kids go up. And they're just going to respond. So if we're yelling, then they're going to yell louder and they're going to cry more. So a great step to both to model and to start the process of calming the situation is to do so for yourself. Take a break, walk away, take some deep breaths, splash some water on your face, do a little bit of quick mindfulness, whatever works for you as a parent to start calming yourself and bringing your own lid back down so that you can return to the situation more patient with a little bit higher capacity to respond sensitively and calmly. And then if you want to be helping your child to get calm, the very first thing that I find helpful to do is to label the child's feelings. So the concept I was talking about with the flipping the lid is it comes out of Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson's work on interpersonal neurobiology, so the science of relationships. And they wrote a great book on this topic that's really parent-friendly. It's called The Whole Brain Child. And so one of the techniques they have in the book is one that we used a lot already, but I love they put a label on it that's really easy to remember. So they say, name it to tame it. And that basically means you see your child's upset, you're going to name what you think their emotion is. And it might look something like this. I usually tell parents, you kind of pretend like you're a sportscaster, like you're narrating what you see. Oh, little Billy, I see that you're really frustrated. You can't get those Legos to go together the way you want them to go. You're really feeling frustrated. Oh, I can see your hands are balling up and your face is all grumpy. Oh, wow, that must be really hard. I know it's tough. So you're narrating what you see, you're narrating their emotional experience, you're helping them make this connection between what happened that they're struggling with and the feeling that comes with it, which over time and practice will help them with their emotion vocabulary. It'll help them begin to realize, those feelings in themselves when they're beginning to occur, because they get in touch with that internal state. And then it just helps people feel seen, Doesn't it feel good when someone says, I get it, I see you're sad. That's hard.
Yeah.
Instead of, oh, you're okay. You're fine. Just suck it up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, I love the teaching your kids, like you said, giving them that vocabulary, helping them to connect the way that my body's feeling and responding to this event. Like you said, frustrated about the Legos or whatever, connecting that. But then what a great word for even as adults, if somebody, for instance, is grieving, so many times we're pastors at a church, and sometimes even Christians can be too quick to just point out a Bible verse and just believe that. Okay, you're fine. And we skip over the emotion, like how hard this is, just to sit in that emotion with them is what they need from us right then. It's the best thing we can do. So it's a really great word.
Yeah, just to help them be seen and heard, validated. Yeah. But the name it to tame it, it's a really easy way to remember it.
Okay.
So in the moment as a parent, what am I supposed to do? Oh, right, name it to tame it.
Yeah. So frustrated was that was a specific one you gave in that example.
Right.
So I'm sure that is a common one.
Oh, yeah.
That can come up a lot.
You're mad. You're frustrated. You're sad. You're disappointed. You're embarrassed.
Yeah.
Sometimes we see acting out behaviors from other negative emotions like anxiety or embarrassment.
Yeah.
And that might be what's really underneath.
Right. Yeah. That's really good. So tell me about, tell us about one of your props. Yeah. What do you have here?
So, one of the things that I think can be really helpful for families who are working on these skills at home is to put together a little coping box.
Okay.
So just any kind of box. You can even have the child decorate it, put stickers, whatever they, make it theirs, and fill it with different things. I like to hit different senses. So, tactile, it might be something squishy. Like I have this, it looks like a big mouth, a squishy mouth, but it's basically like kind of a stress ball thing. And it actually has a smell. It smells like cupcakes or something. So it kind of hits two senses at once. Kids usually really like this. And when they're frustrated or upset, they can just squish it really good. So having something like that in there could be helpful. I have another tactile thing. This one's really popular. It's kind of like a slime ball with netting around it. And when you squeeze it, then little slime pieces come out. And it's kind of hard to do. So it also gets at some of the proprioceptive input. And so you really have to give it a good squeeze. But the kids love this one a lot too.
You mind if I try it?
Yeah.
I'm saying that looks like a fun
awesome
toy.
It is really fun.
She may not live with that.
Yeah. All right, we got to give it back to her.
We may keep that one.
Oh, it's a pretty fun one. So some things that might be kind of hit more on a visual. I have this clear ball filled with glitter. I just call it the glitter ball. And it's kind of fun. You can shake it and then watch the glitter swirl around and settle down. And similarly, this one I bought maybe at Target. But similarly, as you can actually do this as an activity. And this is really fun. You can make a calming jar. Just any jar, any plastic clear water bottle would work. I buy these jars on Amazon. They're like juice jars or something like that. But it's a great activity that you work with a kid. You can fill it with glitter glue, water, and then put the lid on and you shake it up and all the glitter swirls around. And it's a great calming activity because then once the glitter is going, you can practice taking deep breaths and modeling that and watching the glitter fall. So it's kind of like a mindfulness activity where you're really practicing being present and doing the deep breathing at the same time. So that's a fun thing to have. I have another one for visual, which is, I don't even know how to describe this thing. How would you describe it? I don't know. Like oil runs down in little bubbles. It's pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, different colors.
Again, it's kind of soothing just to watch that go down. I have a fidget spinner.
Oh, yeah.
You could put in Play-Doh. You could put in essential oils like on a little pillow. You could put in gum for that tactile chewing input or chocolate or candy. Really, it's really limitless, songs, music, etc.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you could use this little kind of coping box that you could put together. So when you're sitting down you got the name it to tame it, but maybe while you're having that conversation, you could put like the stress ball or something in their hand to kind of, and they're squeezing it, they're kind of doing something tactile, and then you're having that conversation with them. Is that kind of how you would put something like this to use, or?
I would probably spend more time doing the validation and narrating their experience. And then I might offer like, would you like, a hug? Would you like to use something out of your coping box?
Gotcha.
If once they start to kind of come down a little bit, but when the lid is really up, they're not hearing you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the coping box would kind of come in after you start to kind of get them
step
calmer.
2.
Right.
Yeah, step
or
2.
when you recognize your child was starting to get upset, but they hadn't already totally flipped their lid. That's a really good time to start using these techniques.
That's really good. That's really good. And you had a couple, was there one of those books? I noticed you brought some books. Are there books
I love
that are
to
helpful?
use books with young kids. I kind of, as you were mentioning, the EIQ, it's a great way to start working on emotional identification. So this is called bibliotherapy, but you can just buy these books anywhere. So I have books about all different kinds of feelings. Some of the ones I like are Wilma Jean, The Worry Machine. She's a girl that has worries about everything, just everything. When Miles got mad, it's a classic story about a little boy who is mad at his brother for breaking his toy. This one is always really popular with kids. Moody Cow Meditates. The moody cow gets really angry. He has a very bad day and eventually breaks the window at his mom's house.
Uh-oh.
So his grandfather comes in and teaches him some strategies to calm down.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I have
awesome.
a book called Visiting Feelings, which is just kind of general about all different kinds of feelings. The series is called The Way I Feel books. There's a variety of different ones. When I feel sad, when I feel angry, when I miss you. These are really great for very young kids. So our preschoolers, really simplistic concepts, really simplistic ways that they can learn to cope. Just a lot of different fun ones. Yeah.
So my wife's a retired teacher. She's probably heard of some of these.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel like on the other end, being the old person here, I ask y'all about stuff all the time on staff that, have you ever heard of this? And y'all never know what I'm talking about. Because it was before you've already been born.
Right.
So I feel on the other end of that now. I don't know any of these books.
Yeah.
They look great.
Those are awesome. I think, it'd be great to, at the end of this episode, to be able to list some of those on our website. Because I think, those are just great practical things. I mean, my child loves to read. We're reading all the time. So to have some books like that too to use would be awesome.
Yeah. And just making it a part of your routine so it doesn't feel threatening.
Yeah.
That we're like, you have problems with anger, so now we have to talk about anger.
Yeah,
just making it generally.
Just on a normal day,
this is part of our rotation.
Yeah, you're teaching them. That's really awesome. Well, we're going to start bringing in for a landing here. Okay. Wally, any takeaways for you today, or any thoughts?
I wish I knew this stuff when I was younger. When I had the kids at home.
I know, right?
But as a grandparents, we talked about, I can still have a huge part by coming alongside my kids and their kids. In the process. So grandparents are a great resource.
Yeah, most definitely. And for me, I just think there's some really great immediate application. Like I said, I think even as a dad, spending even more time than I have been with my 7-year-old, and I'm listening to that capacity idea of recognizing that. And thank you for these practical ideas. I think putting together a little coping box would be a great thing. For him. And I mean, I'm a dad that's got kids of various ages. I've got teenagers as well. And I think there's still
like
things.
These too, trust me.
I could see maybe their vocabulary is getting more complex with what they're feeling. But
this is popular even with my teens. They love to make a calming jar. Yeah. Surprisingly.
That's pretty cool.
The glitter bottle.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of takeaways for me too. And Dr. Pasqua, anything, just a final thought from you, a final word that if you've got parents listening, just a final little thought on this topic as we wrap up today? Or
I would just say to parents to be gentle with yourselves, that parenting is the hardest job. It's definitely harder than anything else I've ever done, going to grad school, being a psychologist, any of it. And we're not going to do it perfectly. And that's not what it's about. It's really about having good intentions, loving your child, showing up for them, and doing the best you can.
I love that. It's a good word of hope, because, man, if it was for perfect people, oh boy, I'm in a lot of trouble. So, well, hey, what a great conversation. Dr. Pasqua, I really, really appreciate taking the time to talk with us. If there was people listening that wanted to learn more about some of these topics or wanted to connect with you, what would be a good way to do that?
They could just visit our website, connectionschildandfamilycenter.com. Actually, it's connectionsfamilycenter.com is the website. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. That's great. Well, hey, we want to thank you for joining us on this episode of Equip. Equip Online is a partnership between StoneBridge Church and Mosaics of Mercy. Mosaics of Mercy is a nonprofit here in the Montgomery County area. Their desire is to really be a mental health resource hub for our community. And so they've got a lot of great information about support groups, counselors, things like that. So we're excited about that partnership. We'd also encourage you to go visit our Equip website. It's equiponlinepodcast.com, where we have episodes, we've got resources, some next steps that we can recommend on there. And that's it for today's episode. We want just to leave you with this thought. We pray and hope that you will walk in the fullness of life that you've been created for.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. We're really passionate about shedding light on mental health. If you found this discussion helpful or beneficial, be sure to like and share the video. If you want to see more, be sure to subscribe and don't forget to ding that notification bell so you know when we release a new episode. We'll see you next time.